Every time we think we've seen the best Ohtani home run, he says, hey, let me show you a better one. We're going to talk about that and a lot more. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snyder. My normal co-host is Vince Semperio, although it's just me today. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like a lot of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use code all lowercase lockedonmlb for a first deposit match up to $100. And the Dodgers open up their 9-game road trip today, Tuesday. I'm going to say today because I'm recording this Tuesday evening. You might be watching it Tuesday evening. You might be watching it Wednesday morning. We still have never figured out whether to use today or yesterday, but I'm using today. So tonight, the Dodgers played the Nationals. After losing a series to the Nats in LA last week, they didn't start off great. Patrick Corbin, they made him look like a Cy Young contender instead of the crappy pitcher that he is. No offense to Patrick Corbin or his family. He pitched like 5 1/3 scoreless innings, but then the Dodgers got to Derek Law in relief, and then they got to Hunter Harvey, and then they got to somebody else. We're going to talk more in the last segment about the bottom of the lineup coming through because they really did the major damage in this game, drove in the first 3 runs, which ultimately decided the game. Dodgers won the game 4-1. There was, we'll talk about the exciting 9th inning. We'll talk about James Paxton's struggles in the next segment, but it's not really the story of the game, but it was the most fun part of the game was Shohei Ohtani's home run. Dodgers were already up 3-1. What the 1980s baseball card would have called the game-winning RBI had already been driven in by James Outman in the 8th inning. But Ohtani's home run in the top of the 9th inning was his best home run as a Dodger. Hardest hit ball in Major League Baseball this year. Hardest hit ball by a Dodger in the StatCast era, which now goes back over a decade. Ohtani hit the ball 118.7 miles an hour. Line drive home run that went 450 feet. It was a blast. What John Sterling would have called a Stantonian blast is Ohtanian blast. Can we just take that term? An Ohtanian blast. It was awesome. And it extended his hitting streak. He had been 0 for 3, I think, before that. He had already extended his on-base streak because he had already walked earlier in the game. But it provided insurance that, going from a 2-run lead to a 3-run lead is a big deal. It's as big as a lead as you can have while still being a safe situation for your closer to come in. In the next segment, I'm also going to talk about the closer, Evan Phillips, and his struggles in this game. But ultimately, it was a big run. And I saw some snarky Angel fan on social media, yet another meaningless home run in the late innings for Shohei Ohtani. Look, we get it, dude. You're sad that your star left your team. I get it. I'd be sad too. I don't think I'd act like you because I'm an adult, but the fact is Shohei Ohtani is a really good baseball player. He's a really good baseball player. And, we've talked a lot in the last week or so about his numbers in scoring with runners in scoring position. And one of the main points we've made is throughout his career, he's been really good with runners in scoring position. So we're very confident that he will be good with runners in scoring position this year too. And you know what? When he was at the Angels, that's when all those numbers were compiled, when he was always doing great with runners in scoring position. I don't know why humans have the urge to tear down people who they used to like just because they, changed work uniforms, but it's pathetic. The fact is this wasn't a meaningless home run. Yes, the Dodgers already had the lead, but going from 3-1 to 4-1 is a big deal. And when you hit the ball as hard as Ohtani does, that's my favorite thing about him is even when he was slumping earlier in the season, he was still hitting the ball hard. And so we knew at any moment he could do something special. And that's the thing that, like, I'm not going to name a different player, but think of any player on the Dodgers or any other team who doesn't hit the ball as hard as Shohei Ohtani. There's like 700 of them in Major League Baseball to pick from. And when they come up to bat, it's like you would be surprised if they do something super special, like hit a 450-foot home run. With Ohtani, it's awesome to watch, but it's not a surprise. And he's one of the few people in baseball who you can honestly say, yeah, I'm not surprised to see him hit the ball 119 miles an hour and it goes 450 feet. That sounds about right. It doesn't sound about right for very many players. And that's the thing that makes him so exciting to watch, because you know that at any moment, anytime he's up, you could see something really, really special. And that you don't get that with very many players. It's the thing that makes him, even when he's only hitting, like this year, he's not pitching. And the thing that makes him a unicorn in baseball is that he is the only guy in history who has been able to be an elite hitter and an elite pitcher at the same time for an extended period of time. Now we'll see if he can do that for his whole career, but he's already done it longer than Babe Ruth did. And Babe Ruth was the only comparison before him. Like, you have guys like Wes Farrell was a pitcher and he was a good hitter for a pitcher. He's like the only pitcher in history who was actually a good pitcher and a good hitter. But he wasn't elite at either one. He was better at pitching than he was at hitting. And it was like, he's a really good pitcher and a solid hitter. Ohtani is a really good pitcher and maybe the best hitter in baseball. And so even this year, when he's just the hitter, you know what, still being maybe the best hitter in baseball is a pretty special thing. And the things he can do with the bat, with his legs, everything about Ohtani is so much fun. And for me, I had a friend who was at this game. He's a Red Sox fan, but he texted me a picture from his seats. I didn't know he was going. He was traveling for work. And he actually, a couple of weeks ago, was traveling for work and went to Minnesota and was at the first game of that road trip too, in Minnesota, when Ohtani also hit a home run. I think James Paxton also pitched that game. So very similar. And I told him, well, I hope Ohtani hits another home run for you. And then he did. So he's suggesting that the Dodgers should sponsor him, following them around the country. I think if it could guarantee that Ohtani would homer every game, I'd pitch into that GoFundMe or whatever to get him going, especially if we raise enough to take me with them. But he sent me a video of seeing the crowd when Ohtani comes up in a road game. But it was an Ohtani crowd, and it was so much fun. And again, it wasn't the story of the game, which is why I'm glad I have a full 30-minute podcast, because I can spend a segment talking about the most fun part of the game and still have plenty of time to talk about the story of the game, because there were a couple other stories in the game. The offense struggled against Patrick Corbin, and James Paxton struggled against the Nationals again. And yet the end result was pretty darn good. Even Paxton's numbers look pretty good for the day if you look at the results. But I'm going to dig into the difference between Paxton's underlying numbers and his results, and talk about some levels of concern there. I'll do that in the next segment. And then in the last segment, I'll talk about the bottom of the order really, really coming through in this game. So Paxton talk coming up. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And please keep it Locked On Dodgers. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. Just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Spring training is over and baseball season is officially underway, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make PrizePicks the #1 fantasy sports app. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB in the PrizePicks app for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And back, I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Especially want to thank our everydayers, those of you who are with us every weekday morning, either on YouTube or on the podcast. We really appreciate you. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. And to make that easier, you can subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If you are watching this on YouTube, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comments section. If you're listening on the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. I mean, you can hop into YouTube and comment there if you want, or we'll give you a bunch of contact info at the end of this episode if you want to reach out to us. You can also go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's a text message based service. We have a lot of fun texting with you guys back and forth, our thoughts on news, rumors, moves, all that stuff. And you can have one-on-one conversations with us in replies. So check that out. Joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Just a few bucks a month with a free 14-day trial. And be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. And jumping back into this episode, James Paxton was the starting pitcher for the Dodgers, and he continued an unfortunate trend that where he just allows a bunch of runners. And so far this year, it hasn't really come back to bite him too badly. His ERA is 2.61 right now, which you would think, wow, that's really good. Well, his ERA or his FIP coming into this game, Baseball Reference hasn't updated as when I'm recording this yet with this. His FIP coming into this, his ERA was 2.81 before the start, and his FIP was 6.18. FIP, which if you're not familiar, it stands for fielding independent pitching. And basically it says, let's look at the 3 things a pitcher can theoretically control, which are walks, strikeouts, and home runs. And let's see what should his ERA be based on how well he's doing the things he can control. And Paxton's ERA should be a lot worse. And his xFIP, which is the same thing as FIP, except instead of looking at how many home runs he's allowed, it looks at takes like the league average home run rate, because the theory is that maybe you can't control a fly ball, being a home run or not. So anyway, but same kind of thing. It's trying to account for the things the pitcher can control. So walks and strikeouts are the big thing. And Paxton, so far this year he's hardly struck out any batters. He has 11 strikeouts now in 20 and 2/3 innings pitched. Which is really, really low. And he has walked 17 guys in 20 and 2/3 innings pitched. Remarkably, he's also allowed 15 hits. So he has allowed 32 base runners. Has he hit any batters? Let's see. No, he hasn't hit any batters. So 32 base runners in 20 and 2/3 innings pitched. And yet he has only allowed 6 earned runs, 6 runs at all. That is not sustainable. And that's the big concern here. He had one start where we're like, oh, this is what we're talking about. When his start against the Twins, that first game of that road trip in Minnesota, it was right after Chicago, not the first game of the road trip. I think I said that earlier. Silly. First game that was played in real conditions. I'm still bitter about Wrigley Field's weather conditions. But anyway, that game against the Twins, he went 6 innings, 3 hits, only 1 walk. So 4 base runners in 6 innings. He did allow 2 runs, but he pitched really, really well that game. And we thought, okay, this is what we want. Because in his first start, you remember, against the Giants, he walked 5 guys and allowed 4 hits and somehow didn't allow any runs. 9 base runners in 5 innings, but none of them scored. And I said on the episode after that game, I said, well, the good news is Paxton's not going to walk 5 guys every game. And so the fact that he was able to dance around that trouble and not give up any runs was awesome, and things will get better. Well, then his game against the Padres, he walked 8 plus 3 hits in 5 innings. And then this game today, 3 walks, 5 hits, and 4 2/3. Just way too many base runners, and you cannot get by. And he does get a lot of weak contact, which helps. But especially when you're not getting any strikeouts, like that will come back to bite him. And Paxton said in his interview after the game that nothing's quite working for him. And he said he's confident that it will work out, but he's frustrated that it's taking as long as it is. But he clearly was frustrated that he couldn't throw strikes and couldn't put guys away. One of his walks to Joey Meneses, he fouled off a bunch of pitches first. It's like when you don't have a strikeout pitch, you're going to walk more guys because they can foul off pitches until you eventually throw 4 balls. And that's kind of, a lot of times walks are a symptom of not having a strikeout pitch. And so you'll see a correlation sometimes with some pitchers where a higher walk rate corresponds to a lower strikeout rate, because when you aren't getting guys to strike out, they can battle until you walk them, or battle until you give them a pitch to hit. It all works together. And that's why strikeouts are so important. And Paxton in his career has been a decent strikeout pitcher at times. In fact, most of his career, he's been a good strikeout pitcher. Last year, let's go actual strikeout percentage. Last year, 24.6%. 2021, he hardly pitched, but 2020, 28.9, 2019, 29.4, 2018, 32.3%. Like, he's been in that 25 to 33% range most of his career. This year it's 14.7%, basically roughly half of what we should be expecting from him. And if that strikeout rate doesn't come up, the walk rate's going to stay high. Maybe not as high as it's been, but it's going to stay high. The hit rate is going to stay high, and he won't continue to get that lucky. And so hopefully he can get that figured out, because right now I feel like he is the main candidate to be dropped from the rotation if and when they had somebody ready to come back and take a spot. They don't right now, and so he has time. But I was relieved that he only allowed the 1 run, kept the Dodgers in the game, and the Dodgers were able to win the game, but it's not sustainable. Another thing that's not sustainable, Evan Phillips. You guys know, if you're an everydayer, Evan Phillips is one of my favorite players. I love Evan Phillips. I am a huge Evan Phillips fan. Everything about him. It's not just the pitching ability, it's his personality. He was on this podcast, just great dude, gives like good answers to questions, not just cliche answers. Everything about Evan Phillips, I love. He really, really struggled to locate his fastball tonight, and it almost came back to bite him. Somehow he allowed 3 walks and a single and didn't allow any runs, thanks to some bad base running by the Nationals, which we had that last week in – who was it? Was it Gavin? No, Yamamoto. Anyway, somebody in one of the games against the Nationals also allowed, I think, 3 hits and a walk maybe, but somehow no runs in an inning. I can't remember the details now, but because the Nationals ran into an out, and this time it was bad base running by Joey Gallo that ended up with the guy getting caught between third and home. And ultimately, Phillips was able to escape, but it was bases loaded, 2 outs, full count on Jesse Winker, and he struck him out. He was able to get the strikeout, but I mean, it very easily could have gone the other way. And it's kind of interesting, because if Winker had hit a walk-off grand slam, everybody would be calling for Dave Roberts' head, saying it was obvious that Evan Phillips didn't have it. Why did you leave him out there to die? But the fact is, he got the out, and so none of those criticisms happened. But this was definitely a case of Dave Roberts managing for the long haul, for the big picture, because you don't go pull your closer when you're in the first game of a 9-game road trip with no days off. You can't afford to even get anybody warming up, because this is how you have to finish this game. And obviously Dave Roberts is glad that the Dodgers won, but I think he would have rather taken a loss than have to get another pitcher up. And ultimately you trust Evan Phillips. That's why he's the closer, because he has the good stuff. And so even though he wasn't able to locate his pitches, he did throw a good enough slider to finish the game, or cutter. I don't remember which one it was, but he got the swing and miss, got the game over. That's not sustainable. The good news is that's not a typical thing for Evan Phillips. And he hasn't pitched much lately because the Dodgers have been struggling. So there haven't been save situations. There haven't been a lot of situations to get him into a game. It's hard when you're not winning because if you use my closer needs work. I'm using him here in a non-save situation. And then you have 2 straight save situations the next 2 days. And suddenly you have somebody who's not your closer available, which is part of the reason why my preference has always been to not have your best reliever be your set closer. Just have Evan Phillips, but you know what? You're pitching right now because here's a situation where we want our best reliever, whether we're ahead or behind or whatever. But when you have to save him for a save situation, sometimes you go a week without pitching, unfortunately. And so this was probably just rust. Hopefully Phillips will get another save situation. Hopefully, if there's a save situation on Wednesday, it won't be Phillips in the game. Because Phillips threw like 30 something pitches in this inning. So he won't be the one getting the save situation most likely, but hopefully he'll get back on the bump for a save situation in the next couple of days and get that rest kicked off. Because if there's one thing we know, Evan Phillips, we don't need to worry about him walking that many guys on a regular basis. James Paxton, I'm going to continue to be worried about until he shows me with a couple starts in a row that he has figured out those issues. I'm going to come back in a minute. I am going to talk about the bottom of the order that did the job offensively in this game. They won the game for the Dodgers, and it was a thing of beauty. So we're going to dig into that. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This Mother's Day, get something thoughtful for mom on DoorDash. Surprise her from wherever you are with fresh bouquets, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. Pair flowers with a gift card so she can celebrate any way she wants. Is she a bookworm? Try a bookstore gift card. Does she love a good latte? Get her a gift card to her favorite coffee shop. You can't go wrong. Shop with savings that would make her proud. With a Dash Pass membership, you'll save with a $0 delivery fee and reduced service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees, including service fee, apply. Terms apply. I've had a Dash Pass membership since 2020. You may remember things that happened in 2020 that caused us to start doing a lot of door dashing. I have saved a ton of money on delivery and service fees. It has literally paid for itself in my case. So order now and get everything you need for Mother's Day on DoorDash. Use code LOCKEDONMLB to get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. And back. Thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Again, go to be on the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. You can text with us. It's a lot of fun. We're really enjoying it and hope you will too. It's just a few bucks a month with a free 14-day trial. You can become an everydayer by watching and listening every weekday morning, and you can make that easier on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. And you can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 stream channels over on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. This game, like I said, Patrick Corbin, the Dodgers made him look good. He worked around a little bit of traffic, but really he pitched really well. And for whatever reason, the Dodgers couldn't put something together, against him. But then as soon as he left the game, Derek Law came in to pitch, and he got Will Smith out, and then Teoscar Hernandez singled, Max Muncy walked, and Kiké Hernandez hit an RBI single to tie the game to get James Paxton off the hook for a loss, tied the game. And then, so Kiké was batting seventh, drove in that run. And then in the eighth inning, James Outman pinch hitting for Kiké Hernandez because it was later in the game. They had another right-handed reliever in, hard throwing one. And at that point, they had reached the point of the game where it made sense to play the platoon matchups. And so Dave Roberts went to his bench. And this is a move where if Outman strikes out here again, people criticize Dave Roberts. Kiké already drove in a run for you against a right-hander. Why would you pinch hit for him? But it worked out because it was the right percentage move, and the right percentage moves work out more often than not, but still, well, not more often than not, work out more often than the alternative. And in this case, James Outman put up a great at bat and then ended up ripping a double down the right field line to drive in the go-ahead run. Teoscar Hernandez had walked and then stolen second base to get himself into scoring position. And then after that, Andy Pages put up a great at bat and fouled off a bunch of pitches before he flied out. And then Miguel Rojas came up, and with 2 outs, he ripped a line drive single, his second hit of the day, to drive in Outman, put the Dodgers up 3-1. Great base running by Outman there. They mentioned on the broadcast the great jump that Outman got. And one of the big deals about that, there was 2 outs and there was 2 strikes on Rojas. And the benefit as a base runner when there's 2 outs and 2 strikes is as soon as you can see that your teammate, the batter, is swinging, you can go. It's not quite the jump that you get on a full count with 2 outs, because then I can't be caught stealing because it's either a walk or a strikeout or something else. But there's no way I can get caught stealing. This isn't quite that kind of jump, but you can anticipate, I can see he's swinging, so I'm running. And I think that's what Outman did. He got that jump, the running jump, as soon as he saw that Rojas was going to swing, and Rojas lined a base hit to right field, and Outman scored. And that was the game. Ultimately, Ohtani's home run ended up being meaningless. It didn't feel meaningless in the 9th inning, in the bottom of the 9th, when Phillips was struggling to throw strikes, because, at one point, if Ohtani hadn't hit his homer, then the game would have ended with the tying run in scoring position, and Phillips struggling to throw strikes. So Ohtani's home run wasn't meaningless, even though it ended up being meaningless. But those 3 runs driven in by the bottom of the order, two by the 7 spot, 1 by the 9 spot, 3 different guys who have all had their struggles at times this year, and they all got the job done. And the big 3 all did things today too. Some hits. I think they all had at least 1 hit. Maybe they all walked. Definitely a couple walks in there. They were on base, but they didn't end up factoring into the runs that were scored, actually, except for Ohtani's home run. It was the bottom of the lineup. And it kind of made me think about the other day. Vince and I were talking about on our previous podcast, the Scully Avenue podcast, before we joined the Locked On Network and started doing 5 days a week. We used to do a weekly podcast called the Scully Avenue podcast. Our last season doing that, we started doing Locked On Dodgers at the beginning of the 2019 season. And so in 2018, you remember that was the year that the Dodgers ended up having to go to a game 163 to beat the Rockies to win the division and make it to the postseason. And then they ended up going to the World Series because they had kind of come together by then. But early in that season, I remember in May, the Dodgers got swept by the Reds. And I remember an episode that Vince and I did. And the reason I remember it was that series is because I was on a trip. I was on a baseball trip during that series. I went to Atlanta, and then Tampa, and then Miami, and then Houston, and went to games there to knock off some more stadiums off my list. And I remember doing this episode from a hotel room. That my visual memory, I can remember where I was sitting in this hotel room when we talked about the idea of cluster luck. And cluster luck in baseball means sometimes the hits come in a row. Like if you get 4 guys in a row in the lineup who all get hits, if those hits come in a row, like in the same inning, you score a couple runs. If they come spread out across the game, you don't score any runs off those. There was Max Muncy last week. I remember this one stuck out of my mind. He came up with a couple runners on, maybe even bases loaded early in a game, and he struck out. And then later in the game, he hit a home run. And it's like, man, if he had done that, we would have a huge lead right now in this game if he had done that when the bases were loaded. But, the cluster luck is when those hits get clustered together. And one of the reasons that it's become important, that it feels important for the bottom of this lineup to contribute, is because the top of the lineup, the guys who you expect to hit really well, they will be susceptible to that cluster luck. Sometimes they will get hits, but not in a row. And you're going to need contributions from the rest of the lineup. And you don't need them to be superstars. Like James Outman, this double that he hit, like it's not going to make him an all-star team. It's not going to make him a superstar. It was just a solid piece of hitting. And that's what you need from these spots where you come up and you at least have a chance to get those hits. And, Outman, I believe, is in a position where he is going to get those hits. Not every time, obviously, because he's human and baseball's really, really hard. But he's at a point now where he's going to get those hits sometimes. Andy Pages, I think, is getting there. He's still learning, kind of getting his feet wet in the big leagues. He's going to get there. Miguel Rojas is kind of a big question because, he's batting like 281 now. He's got a OPS over 800 and just really, really better than we could have expected or hoped for, honestly. 824 OPS, better than we could have hoped for from Miguel Rojas. He's only had an OPS this high once in his career, and that was 2020 when he only played 40 games. This is the best he's ever hit. And some of that OPS is because he does have a couple home runs already. And I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I was worried that those home runs might be masking some other issues. But what we're seeing from Rojas, he only has 5 strikeouts in 34-ish plate appearances. That's a really, really good strikeout rate. And, like we talked about the other day on this show, putting the ball in play sometimes. Like, I actually found myself when he came up with James Outman on second base and 2 outs in that 8th inning, I thought, oh, I'm glad Miggy's up because Miggy can hit us a line drive here. And putting the ball in play, good things can happen. And, I don't think I'm to the point now where I think Miggy should be playing every day, because I do think some of the reason behind his good numbers is he's being deployed wisely. And I think that is something that you can't overlook. He's being deployed wisely. He's getting a lot of rest. He's not a young guy, he's getting a lot of rest. So all in all, I think he's being deployed pretty well. And I like the way it's working, but I love the fact that when he is in the game, we know we're going to get good defense, and there's a decent chance we're going to get solid offense from him, line drives. And that's, last year when he was struggling to hit, I felt like a lot of it was because he knew he had enough pop to hit home runs. So he was hitting a lot of fly balls. And like, if he's going to focus on line drives, I don't care if Rojas never hits another home run again, and occasionally he will get a pitch that he'll turn on. And, both of his home runs this year have been like barely clearing the wall. They're not like moonshots. So that's great. Occasionally you get one to turn on, hit it over the wall, but for the most part, just focus on hitting line drives. I feel like Rojas could be a good contributor on offense. And if Outman comes around and Pages comes around and Rojas comes around, suddenly the bottom of that lineup, it can help with your cluster luck and help, hey, Mookie, that hit, guess what? We had 2 guys on base for you. So you actually got an RBI for that hit. The more guys in your lineup who get hits for you, the better chance you have of not having bad cluster luck, basically. Yeah, that was my main thought on that during this game, watching the game. It's like, yeah, when the bottom of this lineup can contribute, then even on a game where the top of the lineup doesn't drive in any runs, except for Ohtani's home run late in the game, you still score enough runs to win. And that's because the pitching did the job. I didn't even mention Alex Vesia, who after the first batter hit a deep fly out that was very scary, but then he pitched pretty well. Michael Grove pitched a good inning. Daniel Hudson looked really good in his inning. It was a really good day, really good results for the pitching. Paxton and Phillips, not a good day, but the results turned out okay. And the other 3, the 3 relievers besides them, looked really good. And the offense scored enough runs to win. And sometimes you got to win a 4-1 game. You're not going to win every game 8-1. Sometimes you got to win 4-1. And the Dodgers did that. They could have won 2-1 with the way the results came out, but we'll take the 4 runs. I hope any of that made sense. Like, I found myself thinking about cluster luck while I was watching this game. So anyway, that'll do it for me for today. I want to thank you all again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, especially our everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, please become one by watching and listening every weekday morning. Become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the 2 24/7 streaming channels over on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog. Both of our DMs are open over there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK, 5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.